introduction, and thank you all for coming, and thank you for supporting this talk. I'm very excited to get to share some aspects of my own research that really animate me, as well as the characters that you're about to see. Some of you who were in the earlier class that I got to hang out in got to hear about the difference between shoujo and shonen anime. Shoujo, as you can see, small woman, right? So young women. This is anime that's supposed to be for young women, but anybody can enjoy it. And you might recognize some of the characters up there. Sailor Moon, the heroines of Miyazaki in general. I talked a little bit about Spirited Away a couple hours ago. Azumanga Daioh, Fushigi Yugi, Fruits Basket. They're getting old now, and there's so many more of these topics. And they usually have a number of themes and values included. How about school life? We all know about school life ones. Those are what maybe attract many of us when we're in high school, right? The quest for identity. Who am I in this world? What does my experience mean to me and to the group around me? What's my social space, and how do I navigate that, especially when I'm thinking about the group? Who am I in relation to others? Then there's religious themes. We get to see magical, we get to see kind of Shinto and Buddhist themes get interwoven into a fantasy landscape. And new worlds that have never been imagined before. Sometimes these young girls wake up and find themselves in the middle of a strange experience that they can't always explain, and then they have to navigate the fact that they're in some alternate universe where they fall in love with this prince, right? And then, of course, we have romance, very natural themes that are geared toward young women, but of course, people of all ages, all genders enjoy. But then we come to the shonen style, which shares some of these themes. You all recognize this guy, right? Naruto. How about him? I don't know if you recognize him. Anybody? All right, good. Yusuke from Yu Yu Hakusho. How about him? Yes, Ichigo from Bleach, right? And how about him? Yes, right? Luffy. And then, how about this one? This is older.
Speed Racer.
Speed Racer, right? They turned into a movie a few years ago, which wasn't that great, but still. But we'll go back to the original. And then, of course, Samurai Champloo, which is a wonderful one. And what's really cool about this is the music, right? The feeling and the hip-hop, especially Nujabes, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, too. All these greats are leaving us, right? But and then how about this darker one? Ethno, right? It also deals with ethics, almost the Kantian categorical imperative. And then today, though, I really want to focus on just a few, primarily these two guys, because I think in these shonen anime, we see some of the more important themes that are related to our topic of ethics and Confucian values. We have the same themes we see in the shoujo anime, but coupled with fighting. A lot of fighting, a lot of struggling to win, and being faithful to one's friends and one's values, and giving your all for your nakama, for your friends, for your group. And then, of course, building things, almost like in the A-team, where you're putting things together, building a team, building a habitus for how to live in this world. So today, I really want to talk about things that might not seem to have a lot in common. What on earth does Naruto have to do with Confucius? Well, before we can answer that question, we have to actually answer who Confucius was. Anybody study anything from Confucius here? Okay. All right, good. Just a few. All right, so what do we know about Confucius? Well, in Chinese, his name wasn't Confucius. This is what the Jesuits who first came to China called him when they Latinized his name and actually translated his works into Latin. So he's really Kongzi or Confuci. In Japanese, call him Koshi-sama. It's just different ways to pronounce the characters you see below his name there. And he's quoted in what's called the Analects, or the Lunyu, or Rombo in Japanese, which Japanese still read today as a guiding text. He was a political philosopher from the Principality of Lu, which you can see in red there. It's near the Shandong Peninsula area. He was alive prior to the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang. He saw social unrest, and he wished to make a better society. He was a minor official, nobody very important, maybe a local mayor, a police commissioner. But he was frustrated with the unrighteous governor he worked with, Ding, and in the political landscape, he didn't like it, so he quit, he got out of there. He was known as a great scholar and sage, but few really listened to him during his lifetime, right? Except for his group of students. It is the students who listened to him as they took their master's ideas and expanded them, put them into practice in government and other forms, and then put them down into these texts, the Lunyu. So when we read the Analects, it's always in this sort of question and answer, in this quotation style, because it's really gleanings from what the master said. and then has been translated and put down to us into many languages. But here's an example of what the master said. Anybody want to read this in Chinese for me? No?
子贡问曰有一言而个某某某某某下去了，就这样子。Is that enough?
Oh, that's fine. Okay. Well, what's nice is this is the text as it existed from a couple thousand years ago, but it can still be read in modern Chinese, and I think that's fantastic. That even if the characters get simplified over time, the language is a little different, but it's pithy and still understandable to even the modern Chinese learner. Right? Now, if we translate that to English, as you can see, a guy named Kong was asking, is there any one word that could guide a person through life? And the master replied, how about shu? Don't impose on others what you would not choose for yourself. In other words, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Interesting that some of these universal ethics do exist across time and space, right? And the opening lines of the Analect is something that even Japanese today, young students in Japan, learn from early on. Japanese kids have what they call dotoku, or morality classes, even in 3rd grade. My daughter hated it. She said, why do I have to go to dotoku class, Dad? Well, you have to learn to respect aged people. You have to learn to give your seat up in the train. You have to learn how to become a member of society. So that's what these things are still teaching. And we can see it's a pleasure when you can make practical use of what you've learned, right? Isn't it a pleasure to have an old friend come visit from afar? It was when Melody came. And isn't it a sure sign of a gentleman or the superior person, the junsu, right? That he does not take offense when others fail to recognize his ability, right? I don't need other people to tell me how great I am. I know how good or not good I am based on how I act, based on how I do. Right? It's a pleasure to know really who you are. Right? These are the first lines of the Analects that Japanese kids would learn, as we might learn when in the course of human events, right? Or we the people, right? We're English students. My kingdom for a horse, right? These very popular, famous lines. And with the end of Lunyu and other Confucians later on, like Mencius or Mengzi or Shunzi, these are other scholars in the Confucian landscape. They found ethics within these texts that are really practicable. And for Confucius, one of the chief ones was this idea of, in Japanese, rei, or li in Chinese, which means ritual propriety, good manners, etiquette, knowing what's right, what's agreed upon by the family and community, and then putting them into practice. The person who fails to make use of them is likely to be misunderstood. Okay, there are fakers, deceivers, who could also make use of such rules, but people will mistrust them because they'll know that their heart is false. Even if they're pretending to be a virtuous person, eventually they'll get found out. The li are these traditional religious values, proper behavior, and when performed with sincerity, they're what make the individual human. Right? So this is our behavior that translates to our humanity. And then we have what's called ren, or jin, and you'll notice that this character is made up of human on the left, or person, and then the number 2. Right? So this idea of jin is what happens between two people, right? And it's benevolence, human-heartedness, or even loving kindness, right? And so we can say that chief among the Confucian values are rei and jin, okay? And these are what are necessary to create cohesion or harmony in the group, okay? So I have rei on the one side, I know what to do, and then benevolence for others who don't. And we always have to balance in between those two things, right? And we find trouble. If I'm too benevolent, then I let people get away with murder. If I'm too much on the legalistic side, too much falling on principle, and then I'll never have room for other people to grow. So Confucius, being wise, understood that all of the values have to go between these two poles, and we act in both ways. Another important idea in Confucianism is this idea of oyakopo, or filial piety. That's a strange sounding word. Right? It just basically means loving your parents and honoring them. Right? Another important thing for negotiating your relationships in the group and in your family. Respecting one's parents, then one's ancestors, those who have passed on, and keeping their memory as if they're still in the group or still with us. That's how the Japanese Buddhists have interpreted understanding that the relatives have passed on, but they're still part of your family, right? And so if you've seen Mulan, Right? They tried to represent that, right? Where she talks to her ancestors, right? So offerings are given, incense at the familial altar, even report cards are shown in front of the familial altar where the tablets of the Buddhist names of the family members that are put in there after they pass away, they're still considered able to talk to the spirits. So there's sort of a Buddhistic inflection of this Chinese idea of filial piety. Even like at the Qingming or the festival where the Chinese will go to the graves of their ancestors, clean the grave and make offerings. That's a Confucian idea. Japanese do it too in their own way. And another important value, and I know I'm flying through these because I want you to see the clips so that you can see how these actually work. But I gave you a handout. Hopefully that helps. Reciprocity. So Japanese also have this idea of group harmony by having reciprocity, interpreting li, right, the ritual, and then ren, human-heartedness, through the ideas of giri, which is duty, and then on, which is one's debt or one's favor. On is defined as kindness, goodness, a benefit, a debt of gratitude. There's oya no on, which is the parental love, shu no on, one's master or lord's favor, and then there's even the concept of being indebted to one's teacher, and even the understanding of the extent to which one is indebted. And we'll get to that in a minute. Giri, meaning justice or duty, is what you owe to the person to whom you're indebted. February 14th, what did we have? Valentine's Day, right? So Valentine's Day has a long tradition in Japan going back to 1954 when a chocolate company decided that we could probably sell more chocolate if we invent a Hallmark type holiday. So let's bring Valentine's Day to Japan. And so there it came to be that people gave chocolates to their sweethearts and enriched the coffers of the chocolate companies. Now, even later, Japanese, understanding the group and wanting to respect everybody's feelings, came up with the idea of giri choco, the chocolate that is owed. Heaven forbid one of your classmates doesn't get any chocolate and feels left out because nobody loves them. So it came to pass that the women on Valentine's Day gave chocolate to everybody, all the boys, but maybe one special one with a little bit extra in it for the one they really liked. Now, my kids weren't allowed to give any chocolate on Valentine's Day. They kind of said, no, this is getting out of hand. They kind of stopped that. But giri choco, the chocolate that you owe, that's kind of a Confucian concept, not wanting to make the group feel disrespected, right? That it's a duty to make everybody feel similar. And now, of course, we have another kind of reciprocation. We have White Day. When do you think White Day is? If Red Day is Valentine's Day on the 14th of February, when's White Day? March 14th. And men now turn around and give chocolate to the women, see? So it's not just giri choco for the women now, men reciprocate. Kind of cool, right? So you get the picture that there's this courtesy, there's a gift giving that demands courtesy in return. And so gift giving can almost become frustrating in some cases. If you give somebody a gift, they give you a gift, you have to keep going back and forth and back and forth. Japanese will keep a closet sometimes full of gifts that they can re-gift when necessary. Right? So we have these poles of rei and jin and on and giri, and we negotiate in between these things in order to really discover virtue ethics. All right? So this is what I find very interesting. Right? Virtue ethics is not this Kantian type of ethic where there's one way to always act no matter what. You've all heard the story, imagine it's World War II, you're in Germany, you're hiding Jews, a Nazi comes to you and says, are there Jews here? The categorical imperative, what do? Can I tell a lie? Is it okay to tell a lie for a greater good? In Confucius's case, yes, because certain things are at bay here that count more than one categorical way to behave. And so that's where we get the idea of situational ethic. So in here, we know that filial piety is important. We come from our parents. Without our parents, we wouldn't be here, so we owe them. Right? So say one of Confucius's conversations here, the Duke said, in my land there are many righteous men, and if a father steals a sheep, the son will testify against him. Categorical imperative, right? Always turn in the bad guy. But Confucius said, well, the righteous ones in my land are the ones who will run away with the father on their back. Right? In other words, the correct way is to conceal the wrong of the family, protect your father. Right? We wouldn't consider that legal, right? But that's the whole idea, is that there are some things that go beyond some code that somebody gives you based on your relationships. Right? So that's more situational. And then within all of this situation of our situational ethics through our relationships. The 5 cardinal relationships which are on your sheet, you have yourself in the middle. You have, I like to envision it this way, ruler, ruled, friend, friend, older brother, younger brother, husband, wife, and then parent, child. At any given time, we have these vocations. I could be a ruler, I could be ruled. I could have authority, somebody has authority over me. I can be a spouse, I have children, I have siblings, and I act each way to these different people depending on what they mean to me and I mean to them. And that requires proper ethics of benevolence and propriety. And all of this in Confucian's thinking is to promote the idea of harmony, that you have a balance in society. If you can act righteously and if you can act with benevolence, then you can bring about a more harmonious or more healthy society. Okay, maybe Confucius was a little bit too optimistic. But when you're dealing with the realms of being and becoming, you've got to have a dream. You've got to have a transcendent thing that's your goal. Otherwise, you'll never get there, even if it's too lofty, to try to create the idea of chowa, or ordered harmony. This is what really the central idea in Confucian thinking, and even Japan is. Because when you go against chowa, you cause what's called a meiwaku. If you learn any one Japanese word today, I want you to learn this word, meiwaku. Can you say meiwaku? Meiwaku. I love this word. It's made up of to astray or to err, and then perplexity or doubt. So when you cause going astray and someone else's perplexity, you are doing meiwaku. And that's the thing in Japan you should never want to do is meiwaku. So most behavior, even when we're teaching Japanese language, is teaching how not to be meiwaku to your neighbor, to not impose on others what you would not impose on yourself, right? So this idea of the debt and the propriety, what you're supposed to do, what you owe somebody, as it's reciprocating, you can kind of look at it this way. You start at the place of wa, of harmony. Somebody does a meiwaku, an annoyance, and then somebody comes up with a way of apologizing, and that might involve someone's benevolence on the other side to accept the apology. Maybe some gifts are exchanged to show you really mean it. And then ritual propriety takes over, and then forgiveness happens, and then we return to harmony. So knowing how to act, knowing what is expected, and negotiating these things allows you to get through both having grace for somebody that messed up, as well as allowing them to apologize. I think in our society, we don't either have grace for people who mess up or want to hear the apologies. We just want to be all law and angry with everyone. Right? Rather than coming up with a more ethical, humane way of dealing with differences so we can restore the fragmented whole, which I think we're all fragmented, but have lost our wholeness, even as America or even as a global society. Right? So Confucius has some things to tell us about how we can restore through our relationships and what we owe one another, right? I can tell you tons of stories where I was either meiwaku or someone was meiwaku to me, but I want to get to the clips. So yeah, just don't do it again, right? That's the way to continue doing wa. Right? So in our anime, we have the same relationships. Right? But what's interesting to me is that while these main Confucian relationships are there, the group also is the social group is a norming force that acts like a ruler. You also have to know what the group expects of you, what you owe the group, and what the group owes you. And sometimes, in the Shonen sense, how to go to bat for one another. And you're going to see this in Naruto, that it's always about the friendships, the relationships with the people on the horizontal axis, as well as the vertical axis of positioning yourself properly. So really, these deal with siblings, friends, and parents. This person in the center is going to be the 12, 13-year-old boy, like Naruto. Naruto himself is very brave, he's brash, has a very strong core in his inner being. He has a lot of potential, and he's just not very mature or polished. In fact, he's a blockhead. He's meiwaku incarnate. He is meiwaku to his whole village. You'll even see this, that this demon fox which destroyed the town was sealed inside of him. And the town hates him because they only can understand that he's the embodiment of this nine-tailed fox, of Meiwaku. And he has to get beyond that to prove that he's a valuable member of their group. So Kishimoto, who drew Naruto, really did it with the purpose of creating empathy for the kid who never really made it and has to work hard to become recognized. And I think that's a very universal thing that resonates with a lot of us. He was also a little bit inspired by Toriyama Sensei. You can see Dragon Ball that there. And he's also a big fan of One Piece, which is still running. I mean, it's just such a long-running anime. And the characters that we're going to encounter today in the next few clips, on the left here we have Sasuke, we have Sakura, and we have Naruto. They make a three-person team, a Sannin Yumi, and they're responsible to one another and for one another. Then you have Iruka, who was the first teacher to recognize Naruto and mentor him, with lots of benevolence. Then you're going to see Kakashi, who had benevolence, but he stood on ceremony, and you can see the difference between the two. And then the Hokage, who's the village elder, who has some choice words and always is wiser than everyone else. And here in this 50th anniversary interview special, in the box up there, it translates roughly to, from the depths of despair, Naruto shouts forth his dream to overcome all generations and become the Hokage. This tale is about the personal growth and strengthening of ties between Naruto and his friends as he pursues his dream. Okay, that's very important. The idea of fighting to win, personal growth, self-cultivation, which is another Confucian idea, and then staying sincere. So, most of you know this anime? Anybody not seen this anime? Yeah, see, Naruto has become a very staple thing for us now, right? And as Confucius said, isn't it a pleasure when you've made practical use of the things you've studied? And that's what I hope for us to be able to do now as we look at this brash character and sort of his origins. So we'll see as the story unfolds how Naruto embodies this Meiwaku. So take a look at this clip.
一度船が山崩れ津波かこれに通って人々忍びの輩をなす何が来るぜあそこよかけろわずか一人は忍びの者生死をかけそれを封印せしめるはその者死人権その忍びの者名は四代目おかげと申す
Is he a good student? No. What did he do? He failed. Wasn't in class. And vandalizing. And who was he vandalizing? Not Mount Rushmore. The Hokages, the village elders. These are the top, wonderful, wise people who are responsible for everybody's goodness, everybody's growth. And he messed up their faces. Why? To get attention, right? Yeah, lots of kids do that, right? We'll act out because we want attention, right? He wanted the group to recognize him for who he was, even though he was not being obedient, not doing it in a good way, right? So he is embodying Meiwaku, not doing the things he's supposed to do. He breaches all the etiquette, and the teachers and the Hokage and everybody knows it. They have to deal with it. It's not a lot of fun. And inside of him is sealed this Jinchuriki, this nine-tailed fox, this demon fox, that was sealed by the fourth Hokage, who gave his life in the process of sealing this thing inside of Naruto. Right? So let's take a look at what happens.
きれいにするので家には帰さんからな。
別にいいよ。うちのカットって誰もいねえしよ。
ナルト。
今度は何？
まあなんだ。それ全部きれいにしたら今晩ラーメンを持ってやる。そうだ。
All right.
ナルト。なんであんなところに落書きした？おかげさまどういう人たちか分かってんだろ。
当たり前じゃん。要するに、トカゲの名前を受け継いだ人ってのは里一番の忍者だったってことだろ。特に4代目って里をバギギツネから守った英雄らしいし。
じゃあなんで？
この俺はいずれトカゲの名を受け継いで、でよ、先代のどのトカゲをも超えてやるんだ。船先さ、里のみんなに俺の力を認めさせてやんだよ。ところでさ、先生、お願いあんだけど。
おかわりが？
いや、コロマの二人だけちょっとやらして。
ああ、これが。ダメダメ。これは学校卒業して一人前と認められた証だからな。お前は明日。
ケチ
だからゴーグル外してたな。
おかわり。
ではこれより卒業試験を始める。呼ばれた者は隣の教室に来るように。なお課題は分身の術とする。
よりによって俺の一番苦手な術じゃねえか。
それ。
でもさ、やってやるってばよ。分身の術。
イルカ先生、彼は身のこなしやスタミナは優秀ですし、これでも一応分身の術はできてます。合格にしてあげても。水木先生、みんな最低でも3人には分身してるんです。でもナルトはたった一人。しかもこれは足手まといになるだけです。合格とは認められません。
一人前だね、俺。
やった、さすが俺の子だ。
卒業おめでとう。今夜はママごちそう作るわ。ねえ、あの子。例の子よ。一人だけ落ちたらしいわ。いい気味だ。あんなのが忍びになったら大変よ。だって本当はあの子が。指先は金貨よ。
So what kind of relationship does Iruka Sensei have with Naruto? Hmm?
I think it's a nurturing one, but it's realistic at the same time.
Nurturing, realistic. He's a teacher, but also like an older brother. Right? He knows what he has to do for Naruto to get him to the right place, even if Naruto doesn't see it yet. He believes in Naruto, but is he going to let him off easily? No. But how does he encourage him when he doesn't want to clean up the faces anymore? What does he do?
Ramen.
Ramen, right? Benevolence, but also propriety, getting him to the right place. Now, you don't have to watch the rest of episode 1 to see how it turns out. He does graduate because he does some awesome stuff, and he's getting taken advantage of by the fellow he sees right there, and you'll see how that goes. It's really interesting. But why didn't he pass Naruto? He's got to learn the right way. And that clone would only be a bother to everyone else, right? So you can't let people off the hook without doing a good job because it's going to mess up society. You got to learn to do things right. So we can see all these relationships at work here. And I have a lot of other clips, and I don't want to run out of time, so I'm going to slip to a really important one here. Let's do this one. Okay. They're on a mission. Naruto's past, obviously. This is much later, and he's in a 3-person group with Sasuke and Sakura.
だからお前らも今すぐこれをつけそこたちあと超もう少しで橋も完成じゃあんたらのおかげじゃよ
だからってあんまり無理しないでね。
前々から超聞いておきたかったんじゃがわしが任務の内容を偽ったのにどうしてここにいてくれるんじゃ義を見てせざるは勇なきなり優勝のもとに弱卒なし先代のお金の教えです
That little boy is in this village where a lot of bad things happen, and he lost his father figure. So he's really not understanding why is Naruto doing what he's doing. And neither is Tazuna, the old man who Naruto and his team were hired to protect, who's the bridge builder. The bad guys in the village don't want the bridge to be built. Well, they find out Tazuna lied to get them on this mission. They said it was something much simpler than it really turned out to be. And they asked, why did you do this? And Kakashi said a couple things. The first thing he said was, there are no weak soldiers under a valiant general. And then, that's actually from Su Shi, who said the very words there. You can see them in classical Chinese, but with Japanese pointing. This is called kambun, in the white on the right there. And this, you can see that this is attributed to a general, Tachibana Dosetsu, and you can see it in Japanese there. So, this is being attributed to the previous Hokage, but it's actually a very important Chinese calligrapher and thinker. And then, the next thing he says, to know what is right and not do it shows a lack of courage. Right? This is from the second part of the Analects. So Kishimoto, even though he's never written about this, and he's never said, I am trying to preach Confucian values, because they're known, because they're intertextual, because it's part of the culture that every kid learns, they're being reinforced. Just like, do your homework, go to school, graduate, be a good member of society, get people to recognize you the right way by doing hard work, be benevolent, but also know the propriety. He's bringing out these Confucian values directly and quoting them and equating them to the Hokage, the village elder who is responsible for everybody's well-being. So Confucius is everybody's village elder. Not only that, this high wisdom of the past is taught by Kakashi as the reason for righteousness. But it's also credited to the Yondaime no Hokage, the 4th Hokage, which, spoilers, anybody know who that really is? Naruto's dad. Naruto's dad died in the service of the village, sealing the fox inside of his own son, risking his own son's future and life, leaving him parentless, along with the other village kids whose parents died in that attack, in order to save the village. Naruto is the village's kid who the father gave his life for, as well as equating his wisdom. Kakashi's equating his wisdom with Confucius. That's pretty deep on many levels. That's what I love about this stuff. But if you haven't spent time studying Confucius or Japanese history or past, this might go right over our heads, right? First time I watched it, it sure did. That's what I find beautiful about anime. I have a few more minutes, so let me show you something from Bleach real quick. And then we'll have a few Q&A. All right, so here's Ichigo at his mother's grave. His mother died protecting him.
ごめんな俺まだ打ち損ねちまったよ
じゃん。まあそうしてお前が元気な姿見せてりゃ母さんも向こうで安心だろうよ。息子の独り言立ち聞きするんだろ。やめたんじゃなかったのか。褒められたんだよ、付き合い始めの頃にな。タバコ吸ってる手がかっこいいって。今にして思えば後にも先にもそれだけだったな、母さんに褒められたのは。だから毎年この日だけ吸うことにしてんだ、あいつの前でな。なんで笑ってられんだよ。なんで俺のこと誰も責めないんだよ。きついんだよ。いっそめちゃくちゃに責めてくれりゃ楽なのに。どうして。なんでお前を責めんのよ。マサキが死んだことでお前を責めたりなんかしたら俺がマサキに怒られちまうわ。マサキが死んだのは誰のせいでもねえよ。ただ俺の惚れた女は自分のガキを守って死ねる女だったってことさ。そして忘れんなよ、おめえはその俺が惚れた女が命がけで守った男なんだぜ。親父。しっかり生きろ、イチゴ。しっかり生きて、しっかり年食って、しっかりハゲて。俺より後に死ね。そんでできれば笑って死ね。でなきゃ俺がマサキに合わせる顔がねえ。うじうじしてんだよ。悲しみだってかっこいいもん背負うにゃ。お前はまだ若すぎんのよ。下で待ってるぞ。聞いてるか、ルキア。俺をもうしばらく死神のままでいさせてくれ。俺は強くなってもっともっと強くなってフォローから守るんだ。狙われてるやつを倒すんだ、あいつを。でなきゃおふくろに合わせる顔がねえんだよ。
So the importance of this, in my estimation, is it all happens in the space of relationships. And understanding how to navigate the relationships, even what you're responsible for. His mom died protecting him, he feels bad. He's talking to his mom at the grave. The father says, don't worry about it. I know how awesome your mom was. She died protecting you. And so do her well by living to the fullest. Don't be wishy-washy. Grow old, grow bald, die after me with a smile, which comes from Yoshida Kenko's Essays in Idleness. Right? A lot of these classical Japanese ideas getting distilled in a very modern popular culture sense, I think is quite wonderful. And of course, we even have manga versions of the Analects here. So you can find it all over, and I highly recommend you do. I think it's a text worthwhile of our time. So with that, any questions? Yeah.
I enjoyed the